Hello everyone and welcome to More Power of Speech. Today I have someone special with me, Maria Montero, who has 20,000 plus hours of experience speaking in front of the camera as a news anchor of her own show for 10 years, as a news anchor for CNNMoney Switzerland, and as a journalist. She also has very much experience in making a message concise, getting to the point, and getting your words out that sound competent. And I've learned recently that because of all of her skills, she's very often booked as a moderator, because I guess the organizers just want peace of mind to know everything runs smoothly. I'm very happy to have you here. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's dive right in. And I mean, to me, the obvious question is speaking in front of a camera. Something my clients have to do more and more often, but what they tell me, they are pretty stressed about it. Can you perhaps share a few tips on how do you behave in front of the camera? How do you speak into a technical object?
Well, one thing for sure is none of your clients, none of the people you work with, you're not alone. I mean, it's something that, as you mentioned in your very kind intro, I've done for many hours, many. So a lot of it comes from experience at this point, right? Like anything you've done repetitively for a long time, I don't really think about it at this point. But it's definitely a bit of a mental game, right? You really have to be kind of mentally prepared to speak to the camera and to understand that even though you can't see anybody's faces, they are all out there, right?
I love to hear that, because what I tell my clients all the time is that practice makes champions and preparation is more than half of the success. So hearing from someone with that much experience like you to tell me it really isn't a preparation, I think will be huge relief to many of the speakers I coach.
Yes.
Coming up to a second question, which is competing for the number one question in that area. For my clients speaking on stages at events where they know they're being filmed, because sometimes there's a live stream, sometimes there's a recording being published like a TEDx event, they're always afraid of showing signs of nervousness, getting that red skin on their cheeks or showing sweat marks. I mean, let's be honest, we all sweat, but do you have any secrets to share? How do you do it as a professional?
Well, I could have said it better myself. We all sweat, so there's no secret there. I can't stop sweating. But yeah, there are some really kind of practical choices you can make. For example, when you think of your wardrobe, think of wearing something that is, if you are a person that sweats a lot, especially under your arms, that you wear something that's dark, right? So that you can't see sweat stains if in fact you do. If you get that red neck thing going on when you're nervous, then don't wear a V-neck. You know, find yourself something that's going to give you as much cover as possible, but where you're still comfortable. So these kinds of things you can work out with your kind of, like I said, wardrobe choices. And then, of course, if you're a person that perspires a lot on your face, you just kind of have to be ready for that. If you're in a studio situation and there are makeup artists on hand, and that's ideal, right? That's the ideal world. If you are kind of on your own, then make sure that you have your tissues nearby, your compact with powder, whatever it is you need to be able to just manage that on your own in the moment. And don't be afraid to say, can we just stop a minute? You know, if you're even if it's live, not even stop a minute, just say, hey, let me just have a minute, or just pull it out of if you're like, pull it out of your pocket, out of whatever, and just stab your face like a kind of normal person. And you can just say, hey, I'm getting a little warm in here, or play it off a little bit. But yeah, be prepared for these things. Again, ahead of time if you know this could happen.
Yeah, well, so valuable to hear that it is stressful. And on camera, I mean, even growing up, I watched TV and everything, and it seemed like, oh, they seem to be very relaxed and no signs are shown. But you tell me, actually, they're human beings as well, which I find is a huge relief. Thank you for being so honest and sharing it, really. Let me link onto that, because again, imagining myself in the studio feels to me very similar to the Zoom meetings we are on all the time today after COVID. And so many of my clients find it extremely difficult to lead a meeting, not to say to give a presentation from their home, speaking in this little tiny webcam objective up there. What is it? I mean, in the studio, I imagine there are a lot of people behind the camera. First of all, is that true? You have an audience behind the camera, or what's the real deal today?
No, I mean, more and more you go into a new studio and there's nobody behind the camera. More and more the cameras are robotic.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So you are alone in the literal spotlight
Yes.
with cameras moving robotically
Yes.
around you?
Yes.
Okay, wow. How do you manage that? How do you still feel, in a way, calm and if possible, connected to someone perhaps listening?
Well, you know, I think it's kind of this is a kind of an old thing that you always hear when you're learning to be on camera. But you know, it's about, in my mind, I'm always thinking of speaking to a friend or a relative, a brother, or whatever the case may be, just someone in particular. Like I'm not imagining that I have thousands of eyeballs on me at all. I don't even think about that. Okay. I just see the one person behind the camera. Of course, as you get to know your crew better and you know who your producer is, your director, and they're the people in your ear, then you can imagine that you're speaking to them directly, right? Mm-hmm. And that helps. And they speak back to you over breaks and stuff, so you have a conversation with a live person. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think more about I'm just talking to a specific person normally.
Oh yeah. Now, that's a very nice tip, actually, and I think I've once shared that already with a client, that I told them, well, you know, just pick someone you really like to have a conversation with and just talk to them. And it's true that when being told this tip, it feels like, okay, that will be a bit awkward. I mean, I can't do that, but I'm really happy to hear that you use it as well. So it helps because it helps me when I deliver workshops as well. I imagine someone specific that I'm talking to, and especially in the beginning, it really calms me down a bit until I feel like, okay, this is going well, and you're sort of in your zone. Wow, impactful. Allow me to shift a little bit now away from the studio scene, but still a scenario that I work a lot on with my clients. It is that moment right before you are on, right before you step out on the stage. And I think it's similar stepping out into the studio in front of the camera, or the camera lighting up red. Are there any tips or techniques you've learned over the 20,000 plus hours you've done this that can help you handle the stress that happens right before the moment?
Well, first of all, even after so many thousands of hours, the stress still happens. Like, I still feel nervous before I go out on a stage or before the camera comes on. But for me, over the years, I've transformed that kind of nervousness out of a fear place into excitement. So I try not to look at it as a negative thing. I just think I'm just excited. I'm just happy to be here. You know, and then that's already like a switch I can make in my mind that takes the fear out of it. And then breathe. I mean, again, it sounds so simple and like everybody says it, but it's true. You just have to remember to, all right, breathe into your belly, you know, fill your lungs with air, get out of that tight chest feeling, take a few deep breaths, and just focus on bringing your voice, you know, into your chest and out of your head, you know, so when you breathe, then automatically it's here, you know, as opposed to when you're nervous, right?
Yes.
You know this too from speaking.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and then you can't breathe, you're already up here, you know, it's a way of really just centering you before you go out. And I will say this, I always really focus on the start. Like whatever it is I'm gonna start with.
Yes.
I know backwards, forwards, in my sleep. I could say it without notes, you know. Yes. Those first few seconds when you step out on stage, you need to really feel as secure as possible.
Yes.
And that preparation also helps me in that moment to just know that I've got this.
Yes.
I know what I'm gonna say. No matter what happens right now, I've got my story in my head.
Yes, and that's very powerful. And it's indeed a technique I talk about all the time with speakers for big stages I coach, because your subconscious will realize, hey, a plan works. because you're executing literally the plan you've just made in preparation. And that is such an enabler, because if the first few seconds go well, you will relax a bit more. So brilliant. I'm really happy to hear that. Also you use it. So the tips I share and my speakers use, they are the same. Even after 20,000 plus hours, you rely on those things that just work. And I think it's a smart thing to do. Let's dive a bit into something I think is a bit more complex, which is the content. Now, I speak so much to driven, passionate individuals who live for their idea, but often they find it quite difficult to find the right words so that the message is heard just as it feels to them. Now, perhaps tapping a little bit into your training and education as a journalist, how do you get to that gold nugget? How do you get to the point saying only what you have to say in a very limited time?
Again, practice. We don't. When you're writing for especially live TV, you have to stay. You only have a certain amount of time to say something. Period, or you get cut off. Yeah. You can't. There's not flexible time, right? It's like you have 30 seconds to get out your intro, and that's it. So you learn to be as concise and as possible. So it really is a skill to learn to edit things down to just the important stuff, and then of course to wrap it in a way that is interesting to the viewer, right? If you're just spewing out facts, people disconnect. Yeah. They're not so interested. You have to somehow make it engaging, ask a question, bring in a really surprising statistic, broaden the picture in order to narrow it down to the story that you are going to introduce. Yeah. If you're writing an intro, for example. Yes. But it is always about just less is more. Yeah. Simplify. Don't use words you don't need.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with my trainer hat on, I would sign that immediately. As the empathetic coach, I would have to argue that my clients find it quite difficult to do that, although they understand it. So spill the beans. Do you take a white piece of paper and you just write down everything as if you were journaling, and then you cross it out, you sit on your computer, and then you put it into ChatGPT to make it more concise? Do you have any process that has been working well for you?
Well, first of all, ChatGPT is relatively new, so I have to say that I haven't used that to write any TV scripts recently. But I will say that when I have the time, I just kind of do a brain dump, of ideas. And I'm already, as soon as I know what the story is, I'm already thinking blah, blah, blah. And I put it all down on my document. And then from there, and then I just start editing. Then I just cut it down. Yeah. But important for me is to get it out of my head, down on the paper. And then I can say, okay, really, now I got to kill my darlings, as we say, what's really important and what's really interesting. Yeah.
So what I hear is that it just takes a little bit of work. Sure. There is no silver bullet.
No. Yeah. Is there a silver bullet for anything? I mean,
I feel like,
are there silver bullets for anything? I don't know.
Well, I think we are still looking sometimes, and I sometimes meet speakers who feel like, oh, that will be done overnight. And although many are brilliant, and I wish that for them, and sometimes for myself, it's true that you need to put a little bit of work in, otherwise you won't get anywhere.
Absolutely.
Now that we have the content down, let me go to the second layer of what I work a lot on, which is the way you say it. So delivery skills, mostly also voice. And I know that you're also working as a voice actor, which some people might not even know, because obviously we can't see you, but we hear your voice. And I imagine that you have to be spot on and deliver with a big, colorful voice, leaning into situations, bringing a movie scene or some content bits to life. From that experience, what can you share to make your voice sound that engaging?
Well, again, I think something like voice work is a lot in the breathing. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, when you take a deep breath and you bring your breath into your diaphragm, into your stomach area, then you're already lowering, you're already bringing the air down into your chest and bringing it out of your head. So in that sense, that already gives you an anchors your voice, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And then the rest is really interpretation too. You know, you have to use your imagination and put yourself in the moment that you are for whatever reading you're doing. And also having the flexibility to take, but not, it's guidance, right? To take notes, right? Because if you're with a client, the client will say, well, I need you to do it like this, do it faster, do it shorter, make pauses, more dramatic, less dramatic, more conversational, blah, blah, blah. And you have to be able to respond and to be able to do these kinds of things. But yeah, I think, I mean, I really enjoy voice work. It's a different way of using your presentation skills, and it's less pressure in the sense that you're not on camera. So it doesn't matter what you're wearing, how you look. You know, you could be in your pajamas if you're working from home, nobody would know. So it's really just another fun way to use
fascinating
skills. Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to hijack the interview perhaps a little bit, because I really want to create value for my tribe. And as you might know, my little bubble is mostly female entrepreneurs and change makers and leaders who really want that seat at the table, and they want to get the space in the professional work they deserve. Yet sometimes they meet challenges and might even feel a little overwhelmed with pressure or the environment. That I hope I'm in a place to ask this, but I'd like to pick your brain as a female professional in a world that to me seems quite elbow out attitude sometimes, where you really need to, you know, make some room for yourself and own it. So do you have perhaps a tip on how to own that space when you're somewhere with your voice, how to sound confident, how to be heard in an environment where sometimes my clients, women, are easily overheard?
That's a good question. So I grew up with 3 brothers.
Okay.
So I know what it's, I guess I grew up knowing what it was like to, not only because we were a big family, but, you know, to be heard, you know, above, you know, lots of male voices. But so this might sound funny, but I often think in those moments where I'm not sure, or where I feel like I'm getting too, you know, am I going to be too? I just think, what would my brother say? Like, how would my CEO brother manage the situation? And then I think he'd probably just say, "Duh." You know, there would be no beating around the bush. There would be no apologizing. There would be no justifying. He would just say this. You know what I mean? So I use that strategy often because I mean, it's a reality, right? Sometimes we are, for the myriad of reasons we already know, women are just not as assertive as we could be, especially in group situations and meetings, etc. So oftentimes it's just helpful to remember that, you know, you can do it another way. You know, you don't have to not be a woman. You know, you don't have to lose your femininity when you do it. But you can be perhaps more direct. And in the way, if you're speaking to a room of men, then you're speaking their language, right?
Oh, that's so refreshing to hear that. And I think it will resonate with a lot of the people in my tribe, in my little bubble, because they probably all know this, but being told by someone as accomplished as you are and with so much experience to, hey, I also use that strategy, feels really reassuring. It makes me think of something I say quite often to speakers I work with. I tell them, hey, switch the boss mode on. And I say that, and it feels like it's a title to what you've just described, but what it does is it changes their body language and their voice. Right, to that, exactly. Now, you as a professional presenter and voice actor as well, do you have any specific tips what the voice should do to sound that more assertive or owning the space?
Well, I think you can definitely play with, again, the placement of your voice and keeping it out of some of those higher ranges and the breath that you put behind it. I mean, I don't mean you have to shout.
Yeah, okay.
But you can speak, you can project your voice in a way that just sounds more authoritative. And you know what? If you think to yourself, well, I don't have that kind of voice, or I don't know how to, think of somebody in your life that, okay, it could be fictional, it could be on TV, it could be somebody you know. Somebody in your voice that says, okay, this person has an authority, and just imitate them. You know, sometimes it's like, kind of think, you know, this person, I like their voice. Well, maybe if I can take a little bit of that and I can project this a little bit. And I mean, don't be ridiculous, of course, use your common sense. But, you know, I think that these kinds of things you can also learn from people that you admire, you know, and that you think are doing it right.
Yes.
I don't know.
That sounds really helpful because it's specific. I mean, that you can really apply and train. And now the coach in me will obviously have to add that your brain also hears that other voice and this assertive attitude, and that will become your new reality. So that in terms of mindset training is something many mental coaches suggest that it can really help you. So you're playing a win-win. You're owning in the moment, but you're also changing a little bit your attitude, your mindset, and you're allowing yourself to assume your part of the space and be there.
I think, and I must add, I don't know how you feel about this as a coach, but I must add that in that moment too, you just have to think, of course it could be scary, right? Especially the first time that you try to use your power voice or your boss voice and you try to be assertive. Of course it's going to be scary because you don't know what's going to happen. And you imagine that you're in grade school and you're standing in front of your class and all the kids are going to start like laughing and throwing stuff at you, you know? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You just do it, you know? Just do it.
Yeah.
Just try, and then you'll see what happens.
Yeah, I love that. And what you've been saying to me a lot is allow yourself to be a human being.
Yes.
We don't have to fight, although it feels like a battle sometimes. And I can honestly say also to me, social media and all we should do as entrepreneurs can very often feel like a battle. But I love that you also say that so much, because that's what I want to bring into the professional world, that we can be human, showing up for who we are and enjoy doing what we do. And of course we need to earn money, yes, and there is some elements that we need to do and achieve. But being human, being empathetic is something that I find really important. I was so happy to hear it also from you, having that much experience and being in this space, because it shows me, well, even after all that time, you can still have that as a priority and live it every day.
I think
wonderful.
Thank you. I think we see eye to eye there.
So, we've come to the end. It was wonderful picking your brain from everything you've already done and getting these insightful tips. I know that you're booked a lot, so if you want a piece of Ana Maria for your event or something, I think you have to be fast, but I know that something you've told me before is that some voiceover acting you can always fit in between projects,
yes,
much easier than traveling somewhere for a conference. So if you have something to have narrated or brought to life by Ana Maria's voice and experience, I think you have a chance to do that this year still.
Yes.
And otherwise, I'm sure you might see you at different events around the country, perhaps even outside of Switzerland. And perhaps some things we can't talk about yet that will be very exciting and be featured on the platforms you see this on. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks to all of you for watching.